that field on the GOP side is getting awful crowded. Chris Christie, Doug Burgum, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott. It's a long list of folks all vying to knock Donald Trump off his number one position. And Chris Christie says, look, I'm the tough New Jersey former governor that can get this done. I can give a voice to the frustration of Republicans who are upset with Donald Trump, who've watched him transform our party, who's watched him lead our party to all of these electoral losses. Is Chris Christie just, selling, as we used to say back in the day, wolf tickets? Or do you think there's some real, can he really bring some heat to Donald Trump?
Well, look, I certainly think Chris Christie does have a reputation, right, from his time in New Jersey. I mean, he talks a big talk. He's a big guy, and he says what he thinks. I mean, literally and figuratively, right? He says what he thinks. I think keeping Donald Trump from being the nominee would be a win. But this crowd is it's crowded. This field is crowded. I mean, you also forgot Vivek Ramaswamy, who's still, I think, in the race. So there's yet another person, right? And what he did the first time around was play the middle. He just had to make it through the primary. And I think that's the part that many people forget. It's not the general that's going to matter. It's what happens in the primary. So Chris Christie has to have that money. He has to have that backing, and he has to be able to stick it out through the full primary cycle. And I think a lot of these names you listed, these people aren't going to make it. They're not even going to make a splash. I mean, Tim Scott is a non-starter. Nikki Haley, a non-starter.
Well, I think they're interviewing for vice president, I think, more
I think
than
you're exactly right. But that's the thing. I think Chris Christie certainly does not want to be vice president. And he certainly would never be number two to a Donald Trump. And he has been vocal in his criticism of Donald Trump. I mean, he did like everybody else did. They lined up behind their man in 2016, but I think people see the destruction of their party, and it's so far right, that to pull it back from the brink, I think would take a Herculean effort. And maybe this will energize Republican leaners and moderate Republicans who felt really beleaguered by the party, who've left, who just are disinterested. Maybe he can do that. And I think he might have enough gravitas if he can stay in the race, right?
Yeah. Big if, you're right. Big if, because these races, you want to raise $1 billion, basically, plus $1 billion plus to run for president of the United States. And Chris Christie didn't do so well in 2016. In fact, he did pretty poorly. Dr. Dibinga, the majority of Republicans say they don't want Chris Christie. They're like, dude, you know what? You can phone this in. You can stay home. We ain't feeling you. Mm-hmm. But I wonder, can he play a role? I'm with Dr. Carter. He's not likely to go far, but can he be that voice that punches on Trump in a way that these folks who want to be vice president aren't going to do? So if you're Nikki Haley, you're Tim Scott, you're not going after the boss because you want a second, you want to be number two on that ticket. Maybe you want a cabinet position. You want something from him. But if you're Chris Christie, you ain't getting nothing. You already and tore that relationship up. It's over. It's done. So you can just, go for it. Do you think he can dirty Trump up in a way that will help us in the general election?
I don't think so. And the reason why is because Chris Christie's going to say what he's going to say. He's going to come at Trump, but the Trump supporters are not going to be listening to him, right? And I don't think that, Chris Christie may say it on like an MSNBC or CNN, but they're not going to interview him on like Fox or One America, where Trump supporters are going to be. And so is he going to be pretty much talking into a vacuum? And lastly, I fully believe that Christie could really hit Trump hard on the debate stage, but I don't believe Trump's going to attend the debates because he doesn't need to, because he's already the front runner. So I don't think he's going to give Christie that space to be able to publicly attack him or embarrass him. And so that's why I feel like ultimately Chris Christie's going to be a lot of bluster, and maybe in some of the networks that are non-Republican leaning or non-heavy Republican leaning. But I think ultimately he's going to be yelling in the wind.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And you're right. If he goes on Fox and tries to attack Donald Trump, they're cutting his mic and he will never be invited back. So we know he's not going to be spewing, any kind of hate against Donald Trump, or let's put it like this, telling the truth about Donald Trump on Fox. But I'm hopeful that he gets a big enough platform on those networks you just identified, CNN, MSNBC, maybe some of the morning shows that happen on network television on Sundays, some of the print media, gives him a platform because maybe he impacts those independent voters, not those hardcore Trump voters. He's not going to make it through the primary. We're all in agreement about that. But maybe he dirties Trump up enough so that when we get, if he's the guy coming out of the primary, going into the general, he has had an impact on those independent voters who still are trying to decide if they should vote for Donald Trump. So maybe Chris Christie does have a role to play.